From Wana Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. My name is John Small and I am your host, and I am delighted to bring you my guest today, Joe Airone, aka Sweetleaf Joe. And Sweetleaf Joe is the founder and director of the Sweetleaf Collective, which helps more than 1,000 low-income, terminally ill patients and people of color and veterans access free medical cannabis. And Joe has been an activist in the Bay Area for more than 20 years. He is also the founder of the Humanitarian Circus and has traveled all over the world making free circus shows for refugees and orphans in war zones and developing countries. So basically, Joe is an amazing person. Joe, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So let's do a little origin story here. Why did you start the Sweetleaf Collective? Can you tell us the story behind that?
Yeah, well, it was 1996. I was a 20-year-old punk rock activist in San Francisco, and medical cannabis passed in California, the first law ever in the history of the world. And since I was already doing activism, I thought, well, why don't I start doing cannabis activism? The organization I had been involved with punk rock activism was called Food Not Bombs. And it took surplus from the grocery industry and then redistributed it to those who needed it most, homeless people. And so I just took that concept, take surplus, get it to those who need it most. And when I looked at medical cannabis, for me, the people who needed it most were terminally ill and primarily low income, because those people, if they didn't have access to free medical cannabis, they couldn't afford it and they might pass on without that access.
So what was your experience with cannabis that made you so passionate about the plant? What's your background with cannabis? When did you first discover it? Why was it important to you?
So I first discovered it when I was 16 in high school, and I had a lot of anxiety and social issues. And when I started consuming cannabis, I didn't realize I was using it medically. But I did notice a dramatic change in how I related to the world. And I wasn't overthinking things. It helped slow my mind down. I think I may have undiagnosed ADHD, and it helped me to focus, to slow down. It really helped my depression. I was diagnosed with clinical depression at a young age, and I just started to be nicer to myself, and it really helped. And that's another reason why, I've always had this sort of like helping philosophy. My mom raised me with the meaning of life when I was really young. She told me that we're here to help and we're here to learn, and everything else is extra. And so when I was 18, I started doing activism, helping homeless people. And it just seemed like a great combination of the two. Being of service to humanity and also honoring this amazing plant that provides so much healing. Yeah.
Talk to me about, you've been doing this for 20 years, some of the incredible stories that you've seen of how, cannabis has help people or improve the quality of their life. Are there certain things that really stand out to you in your experience?
There are so many things. I mean, as I said before, I'm a clinically depressed person, and the antidepressants don't really work so well for me. But what I found works is lifestyle change. And when I am of service to other people, it gives me a reason to get out of bed in the morning. So as much as I'm helping these patients out, they are also helping me incredibly in a way that no one else can do. I can't buy this sort of help.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell you how many times I had done a delivery on my bike, and I show up to the patient's house, and the patient is in tears. And through their tears, they communicate to me that if it wasn't for Sweetleaf and all of this free medical cannabis that we were providing to them at the time, that they would have already passed on. And one example is we had a patient who came to us and he was dying of HIV, AIDS, and he had wasting syndrome. And he looked like a human skeleton, very reminiscent of the pictures you see from, World War II in those camps where people are just insanely emaciated. And he was unable to eat. And he was on pharmaceuticals that were not working. And those pharmaceuticals cost like $3,000 a month. People would stop in the street to stare at him because he looked like he was about to die. He didn't have energy to go to work. Sorry, it's sometimes hard for me to talk about this stuff.
No, I mean, it's just an incredible story. Yeah.
So we did our first delivery to him. And in 1 month, he put on 30 pounds. He put on 1 pound a day. And when he told us when he went to his doctor was like, hey, I can't explain like why you're doing so good right now. All I can tell you is whatever you have been doing, please continue doing it. And he was able to put on weight. He was able to get his old job back. He became a functioning member of society once again because of cannabis. The cannabis saved his life. And we hear a bunch of these stories from our patients where they're like, thank you, Sweetleaf, you're saving my life. And that's one of my taglines with all of our partners and sponsors. I always tell them, like, together we're saving lives. Yeah. And it's very impactful, it's very dramatic, and it's very real, and it's very necessary.
Yep. I mean, you're doing an amazing service to people. And like you said, it's also, the thing about altruism and being is that, you're also benefiting from it, right? Because it makes you feel like you have a purpose in this world. And talk to me about the veterans that you work with now. We hear about cannabis really helping with PTSD. Has that been your experience? Anecdotally, have you seen that?
Most definitely. So we had to fight when legalization happened in California. They had a large oversight in the law where they were taxing free compassionate cannabis to patients. So we had to do a fundraiser so that we could get cannabis out to patients. And what happened is we led a fight with 2 veterans groups, Weed for Warriors and Operation Evac. And all 3 of our groups lobbied for 2 years to take away the taxes from compassionate cannabis. And that's where I really started to get involved with veterans, because we have veterans in Sweetleaf who are terminally ill, but it's not primarily veterans. So I didn't understand the whole PTSD thing. And the veterans explained to me how to some of their demographic, the PTSD is actually a terminal condition. There are 22 veteran suicides every day in this country. And that doesn't count the opioid and opiate overdoses that happen because of the VA giving them all these pills to try to address the trauma that they had in combat situations. And there were some veterans that were showing up to Sacramento as parts of these groups who were lobbying. And when they would talk to the senators and assembly people, they would explain how normally they don't leave their house. Their curtains are all drawn all day long. They do not communicate with anyone. And the only time they go out and are social are when they have these veteran giveaways of free medical cannabis.
Wow.
And so they were saying PTSD is sometimes a death sentence or sometimes just a life sentence of being alone. And this medicine is helping address that in ways that pharmaceuticals cannot. There is no overdose potential. And with the veterans too, they were also the ones with California regulations where they were pushing for higher daily limits. They need to consume a lot for their PTSD. So we're talking like 500 to 1,500 milligrams of THC daily.
Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, for your listeners out there that
don't try that at home.
Understand,
yeah,
do not try that. A typical gummy in California is 10 milligrams. So we're talking about taking 50 to 150 gummies at one time. And they were fighting too for the edibles limit because there's that dosage limit where it's only 10 milligrams per edible. And they were talking about if they're going to eat that many gummies, they're going to get diabetic.
Yep.
So there's a bunch of like interesting things that recreational didn't really take into account the medical use. And, you know, the veterans, the terminally ill patients, all lobbying. They were patient activists. They were people receiving compassionate cannabis and then also going to Sacramento to advocate for themselves and other people like them. And it was just an incredible movement. And as much as we were so upset in 2018 when it looked like compassion programs were all going to be closing, and then we had to work for 2 years without getting paid to try to change the law.
Unbelievable.
The bright side of this, there's a couple bright sides. Well, one is that all of these cannabis nonprofits, we didn't realize there was other people doing this work as well. You know, my lawyer, I didn't do interviews for 20 years because my lawyer told me to keep my head down and not make waves.
Right.
So a lot of people didn't know about us, you know, and this is our 25th anniversary this year. We are California's oldest cannabis brand. And I think that means we're the country's oldest cannabis brand. And that movement to re-legalize compassionate use of cannabis, which is free medical cannabis to those who need it most and can't afford it, brought together all these groups. Now we all still work together. When I get a donor that has so much, just for example, last year, Coda Chocolates gave Sweetleaf and Sweetleaf patients $500,000 worth of edibles.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was way more than we needed. So what did we do? I just got on the horn. I'm calling Weed for Warriors. I'm calling Operation Evac. I'm calling other retailers that have compassion programs. And I'm like, y'all want to hook up?
I've got some hookup here.
Y'all want some free weed? You know, and nobody says no to free weed. So that's another project. We have Team Compassion. We're doing supply chain logistics for the compassion supply chain. And last year with Team Compassion and Sweetleaf, patients accessed over $2 million worth of free medical cannabis. And this year we want to do 10 million. And just to plug that funding again, to get to 10 million, we really need a lot more funding and money coming in. And so anybody who wants to help, check out sweetleafcollective.org and click on that donate button.
Yes, for sure. How do you find these people that need this compassionate cannabis, or do they find you, or maybe it's both? How does it work?
Well, in general, for us, they find us. We didn't do a lot of advertising. Back in the day, we had flyers like all over the Castro district in San Francisco. We were focusing mainly on HIV/AIDS patients, but also cancer patients in there. And some of our patients have both HIV and cancer. And so it was with flyers, but also word of mouth. A lot of these patients, they're going to groups where, you know, support groups where there's other patients. They talk about it and spread the word. There's some homes. They give like subsidized housing in San Francisco because our patients, most of them are on Social Security. They're living on $1,000 a month in arguably the most expensive city in the world.
Right.
and they don't have a disposable income. So they're in this subsidized housing, and the whole building has like 100 HIV positive patients.
Jeez.
So they're all hanging out with each other, they're sharing some joints and stuff, and then they're just talking about it. And the phone number gets around, people call us up, and we intake them.
All right. I want to switch gears a little bit here because I just have to find about your Humanitarian Circus work. Because I know that has nothing to do with cannabis, but it's of a personal interest to mine. I actually went to clown school for a minute, but you tell me about what that is.
Where did you go?
Oh, it was in New York. It was in New York. It was like a private thing that I did for like 6 weeks. But I never ended up being oh God, I don't remember. This was 30 years ago, but I can look it up. Okay. It was super fun. So tell me about what you do. Like, what is your circus? Like, tell me do you perform? Are you, what kind of circus acts do you do?
Yeah, I'm a world touring circus performer, clown. I do stilt walking, unicycle, juggling. I can walk on a slack rope and juggle at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
A little bit of magic. I've done doctor clowning in hospitals for kids with cancer. I am also a fire performer. That's kind of what I'm most well known for. I was doing fire in the Bay Area in the 90s when there was like less than 10 people performing fire in the whole area. My signature act is I do fire poi, the chains. It's like fireball on the end of a chain, and I do it with my hands tied behind my back. And I still haven't really seen anybody else do that.
How did you teach yourself all this stuff? You just through trial and error?
Most of it was self-taught. When we were doing fire in the 90s, like now there's like classes, there's like YouTube videos. We didn't have any of that. We had to discover tricks, and cannabis comes into that as well, because I would get stoned and I would practice for 2 to 3 hours, and I would come up with new tricks just by being in the zone and like dancing around and like listening to some music that I really liked. And
it helped your creativity.
Yeah.
Once again, though, don't try, if you're going to be working with fire, maybe don't, for the first time, maybe don't do it stoned. It's just a safety tip for those at home.
The other thing I tell people is with fire performance, I practiced for like 9 months before I actually lit it on fire.
What?
And so I know some people these days, they're like, oh, that looks like fun, let me try it. And their first time they're doing it on fire, that I really wouldn't recommend that.
And so you most recently, I think I read that you were in Greece and doing circus acts for Syrian refugees.
Yeah, I was on Lesbos. This was a number of years back. So one of my friends from the End of the World Circus, we did this punk rock circus in 99 and 2000. And he lives in Greece now. He's one of my best friends, Fred Normal. Oh, and my circus name, my clown name is Joe Mama the Clown.
Joe Mama the Clown. That's great.
And so Fred does something called the Sea Clown Circus, the Pirate Circus. He has a sailboat, and we, in the summers, would sail around different Greek islands, living on the sailboat, and then doing street performance shows. So when the whole refugee crisis happened, he brought his boat to Lesbos, where a lot of the refugees were coming across in boats from Turkey. And there was a huge refugee camp there. And we went to the refugee camp and made free circus shows for the kids. And I was there for, I want to say about a week and a half, but Fred was there doing it for over 3 months.
Wow.
And, that was one of the projects. I did the project in Ethiopia. One year I did a trip with a bunch of French people. We drove overland from France to Mongolia through Russia. And we worked at the Mongolian National Orphanage. And I was teaching them circus. I went to Kosovo in former Yugoslavia for 6 years in a row. That was a low-scale war zone.
Tell me what the reaction was. I mean, obviously you kept going back. So just had why were you doing this?
Well, that one in particular, I was doing partially because a lot of those refugees at that time were refugees because of NATO bombing. And there was a lot of political shenanigans going on. And the children were being displaced and were refugees. And regardless of their parents' political beliefs, I didn't feel like the children deserved that. And I can't make the bombs not drop, but I could go there as an individual and work with the kids to try to make them smile. And I can send you a link to, there's somebody did a documentary about that project on our 4th year, and you can see more about it. We would go to the same place every year, and I brought a bunch of Serbian friends down there with me. I would stay in Serbia and Belgrade. The kids we worked with were Serbian refugees. And then we would also work sometimes with Albanians and Roma, gypsies. And one year we worked with the UN. They like organized all the shows for us.
And yeah, we'll include that clip. I'd love to include that clip in the description show notes for this show, because it'd be great to see that. Talk to me about, you've mentioned this a bit already, but what cannabis has meant in your own life and how you use cannabis sort of on a daily basis.
Well, to be transparent, I have been taking a break, but I was a daily user for decades. Most recently, I was using it for insomnia. I have insomnia issues. And like I said, I think I have undiagnosed ADHD. Now that I've been taking my break, I noticed that, like,
yeah, I hear.
I can sometimes be all over the place. I'm very like work oriented. I have 10 things going on in my head at the same time.
But when you focus, you're very focused, right? Like on one thing.
I've been getting,
you're hyper focused.
I've been getting a lot of things done, actually, now that I'm not as stoned. But
why did you take a break? Why did you take a break?
Just to try something different. You know, it's like after doing it every day, it was the norm, and doing it every day for decades. I love cannabis. Yeah. It's changed my life. I think I would be a very different person without cannabis. But then I was kind of wondering, I'm like, wait, who am I really? Because the norm was being stoned. And
yeah, that's interesting.
I was like, wait, who am I? And yeah, then I mean, I've always been very work oriented and focused, and, you know, making successful projects, successful businesses. But without the cannabis, it's like, I feel like the ADHD is like a superpower almost. I'm like getting so much stuff done. I'm having so many great ideas. I'm like organizing people because I have too many ideas to do them all, and I'm delegating, and I'm like, wow. It's nice to sleep in too. Like, I don't sleep in anymore, but I was using like Rick Simpson oil at night, and that was great to sleep. And the other thing I think with Rick Simpson oil that people don't talk about, people are using it to combat cancer. It can cause apoptosis in mutating cells, which means the cells decide to commit suicide. It can lower tumor sizes. One thing I haven't really heard people talking about, though, is using Simpson oil as a preventative for cancer. So that was another reason I was kind of using it. And my favorite way to consume cannabis is with spliffs. I've spent too much time in Europe, so I mix a little tobacco in with the cannabis. I love those, you know, hash and tobacco spliffs. That totally takes me back.
How do you feel about edibles?
Oh, I love edibles.
All right. Well, we'll have to get you some Wana edibles, since that's the sponsor of this show. I'm sure they'd be happy to send you some. So you started the Sweetleaf Collective, and how is it funded? Like, how are you able to keep it going?
So for years, we've always had to do creative funding So during the 215 days, there was...
To explain that to our listeners what the 215 was, tell us that, because for those who are not in California.
So Proposition 215 was the law that created medical cannabis in 1996. And it was in effect up until the beginning of 2019, when Proposition 64 legalized recreational use. So during that time period, we operated under this collective model, and we were the caregivers for our 100 patients. And that meant that we could pick up donations in Humboldt, pick up 50 pounds at a time, drive it down to the Bay, package it all up, ride our bikes around the city, delivering all this free cannabis to our patients, and it was all legal. So we also, at that time, did a few different creative things for funding. The cultivators, we would provide them with physician recommendations, which would make their operations legal, and they would be giving us their overages. We also had a hash making business for about 7 years. And that was really good. It was lucrative in a way where we made hash. We were able to sell half of it at dispensaries, and the other half we were able to give away to our patients. So we basically made a 1-for-1 product, and there was still extra funding after we sold all the hash. And all of that extra funding went to fund Sweetleaf. So at that time period, we had like 5 people working in the office, 3 bike messengers. It was a larger organization. We definitely lost all that funding when legalization happened. All the cultivators who were providing us funding, they had to start paying permit fees and all these taxes. They did not have the funding anymore to give to us. We were no longer able to make products because we didn't have a cannabis permit under Proposition 64. So we ran into a bunch of difficulties. Now, since we're not plant touching anymore, we are a patient organization. We have filed for nonprofit status. And so we get more traditional funding these days.
Right.
And when I say traditional, I mean more like from individuals. There still isn't a foundation that you can write to as a cannabis nonprofit that gives cannabis grants to nonprofits. So that's something else we're working on. We kind of, at some point in the next 5 years, want to become a cannabis foundation that then funds other cannabis nonprofits. We just did something recently. We gave Dear Cannabis a cut of the funding we got from the Emerald Cup. They made a big donation this year to us. And so we're starting to do that. We're starting to give micro grants. But yeah, we're doing funding through traditional funding. We have also started fundraising with cryptocurrency.
Oh, wow. That's great.
We're going to do an update on our website and put our wallet addresses up there, just so people know if you are in crypto. We have this all backed up on a ledger device. So we do know what we're doing. It's very secure. And it's exciting. You know, we started working with an NFT project called the Crypto Cannabis Club. And they have been, over the past 3 weeks, through traditional funding on PayPal. And anybody who's listening, if you do want to make a donation, go to our website. We have a little link to the PayPal. So they've been getting us funding through the PayPal, but also funding through cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting sort of new direction to be going in. And the funding that they've raised in the last 3 weeks has been enough for us to help patients access 1.5 pounds of free medical cannabis. We like to quantify the impact for everyone who's donating. Every dollar raised means a patient can access 1 free gram of medical cannabis.
So you have something called Team Compassion that you're doing right now. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, so Team Compassion works closely with Sweetleaf, and Team Compassion handles supply chain logistics in the cannabis space. So Team Compassion received a 200-pound bulk flower donation from Soma Rosa Farms. And we are packaging that up this month, and it will all be gotten out free of charge to low-income veterans, terminally ill patients, and people of color. We also just did a partnership production run with Team Compassion and Swami Select in Mendocino. That's 25 pounds that will be going out to patients. And we have another new partnership as well with Sweetleaf with Dr. Weedy. And they are a online service. They say they'll get you your doctor recommendation in 420 seconds. And they have generously offered 30 free recommendations monthly to Sweetleaf. And this is an annual donation of around $12,000. So these are really great people, and we're just really thankful to have this opportunity. It's actually so many recommendations that we will be extending this service out to other compassion programs. And that's something Sweetleaf is really kind of focusing on now too, is solidifying the nonprofit sector, providing SOPs and tools and technological tools for other compassion programs so that we can all be more efficient and come together as a nonprofit sector. Because what we're doing here in California, when federal legalization happens, we will be the model for the whole country about how to run the cannabis nonprofit sector. We are starting to see ourselves as mentors. And how can we mentor other programs? Because Sweetleaf's number one mission is easing human suffering through plant medicine and creating more access for patients. And so it's getting to that point where creating the most access means working with other groups so that they can be more efficient. The more efficiency we have in the nonprofit sector means the more access that we will be able to create. So we have some exciting announcements coming. There's 2 things we'll be announcing probably mid-year that will be incredible tools, not just for California Compassion, not just for the nonprofit sector of cannabis in the US, but actually for the world. And we're really excited. We want to see within 10 years, the nonprofit sector of cannabis worldwide getting $1 billion worth of free cannabis to patients within 10 years. And we're going to do it.
I'm sure with you at the helm here and with all you're doing and all your partners, you can make it happen. Just to reiterate, if people want to donate to Sweetleaf Collective, what should they do?
They can go to our website, sweetleafcollective.org, click on the PayPal donate button. Pretty soon we'll be having some of the wallet addresses up on the website. So if people want to donate crypto, they can do that. If people want to reach out to me too, my email is sweetleafjoe@gmail.com. And yeah, like I said previously too, every dollar raised means a patient can access a gram. So for example, a $28 donation, patient is accessing an ounce. If it's a $454 donation, 16 patients are each accessing an ounce. That's a whole pound.
That's great.
Of compassion out there.
That's wonderful. So thank you so much for doing the show, and thank you for all your incredible work you're doing all over the world. It's, we need more people in the world like you for sure, Sweetleaf Joe.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana, the #1 infused product in North America. Wana's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information, head on over to wanabrands.com. That's Wana, W-A-N-A, brands.com.